My newest project idea is focused on the trunk. Now, the trunk is going to need some work, and it's going to need a lot of work to make it look the way I kind of have it envisioned in my head. But there is one part in particular that I found it to be a little bit of a task in determining how I was going to remedy the situation. So let's get right to it. Let me show you the trunk and show you my idea and the progress behind the task that I'm about to take. So here we are at the trunk. Now here's the problem that I'm referring to, is that hole. Basically, the 74 and 73 models have this hole in the trunk on this side, while on this side is nice and flat. Now putting things in the trunk makes it awkward because of that hole. So what I wanted to do was cover up that hole and make the trunk a little bit more flat. That will also make it easier to put some carpeting or upholstery material on the trunk without having all these crazy dips and bends that I would have to deal with if I was to try to upholster this. So the first thing I had to do was cut out the material, the sound deadening material, and I did that, as you can see, and that black coating there is POR 15. So even with removing that sound deadening material, which was quite a task, that POR 15 did not peel away from the steel. So that stuff is awesome. So I made a template of that hole out of paper. Then I took that paper and transferred it over to some cardboard, and I created this. And what this is a cover for that hole. Now, with the cover in place, I now have a nice flat surface. And I also have some symmetry between this side of the trunk and this side. Now there's a spare tire that's going to go over here, but over here I want to be able to use it for whatever. You know, if the spare tire is going to take up the space maybe to right around here, if this is nice and straight as opposed to what it was before, a big hole, I can put things on there. So that's why I wanted it straight. So after doing that, I needed to figure out what I'm going to do with the hole that's under the cover. I can't just leave the hole there. I want to be able to use it. So I decided to make another template. And this template is actually the same dimensions. Well, let me take this off and show you. This template is the same dimensions as the floor of that hole. Everywhere that was pretty much flat. And you can see I wrote some measurements there, and those are just references for how much space I'm actually getting with making this into a storage area. And that was the idea. Since I'm going to be covering with this, I want to be able to still utilize that area as a storage for like emergency supplies, maybe a couple tools, you know, whatever, jumper cables, whatever I think of, I can just toss in there. And then of course with the carpet over the whole thing, it'll be hidden and it'll be a nice storage area for various things. So this floor template is going to be, at least in my mind right now, the door. So I need to make a cover, and then in the cover I need to cut a door. So that's what I had to do, and I will show you what I came up with. Now if you remember back when I was doing the package tray, I had bought this 1/8 inch press board, and so the package tray was pretty much a small area, as you can see. So I had so much left over. So knowing that I have that left over, I decided to use that with the templates and cut what you see here now. So there's my cover, which mimics the cardboard piece, and there's the cutout for the supposed door that I decided to create. And so the thing, let me show you here. The thing that I had difficulty was, let me show you. Pull off this light. this hole, though there's the floor, it has some kind of angles. And so I wanted to make a wall here all along the flat areas of the floor. And you can see how it pretty much pans out. And I wanted that whole floor to have walls. So in order for me to do that, I needed to create this compartment, which is now a door. I wanted to create walls along the sides of these dimensions. So after you know, showing my idea on forums and stuff, one person responded and gave me an awesome idea. He said, why don't I use fiberglass to pretty much create this? Well, I didn't want to use fiberglass because of the weight issue. In other words, I didn't want to fill up that whole void with fiberglass. I wanted to fill it with some closed cell expanding foam, which is similar to what boats use in the creation of their hulls. So I needed to figure out how I was going to do the expanding foam up to the point where there's a wall. So I went to Walmart and I bought me some fleece, and I bought some resin and fiberglass material, and I decided to cut up a few strips, and I created this. So now you can see that it has a wall. Now the fiberglass with the fleece was a great idea because I was able to make this wall without actually creating strips of wood or styrofoam or whatever. Basically, I just took some 4-inch strips and I kind of cut them up strategically so that I can, you know, kind of follow the curves of the angles, dip them in the resin, and just let them drape down off the sides of this hole that I made for the door. And that created my walls. So let me show you the other side of this. So you can see how it's pretty much set up. So that's what I got so far. Now the plan is I'm going to reinforce all this completely, and because this has to be structural, I'm also going to put expanding foam to take up the space of this, you know, kind of void that's there. That way, if anything's on top of this board, these walls that I created here are gonna hold the panel up, but at the same time the foam is going to reinforce that so that I can put some weight on that board. And that's pretty much how it's going to be. And I will have a storage space in my trunk. So here's the work so far. So let me show you what I've accomplished. Now the walls are going to be structural. They have to be able to hold this panel up for whatever I put on top of it, because its primary use is to make sure that the trunk looks kind of straight. That's the whole reason for this project. And then of course using the hole as a compartment was an added bonus. So I had to make this structural. So I put 4 to 5 layers of fiberglass cloth and fiberglass mat, of course, along with the resin. Let me show you what that is. This here is the fiberglass mat. So basically what it does is it has fiberglass strands going every direction. So when it's in the resin, it gives strength in all directions. So that has a couple layers of that. And then to tie it all together, I wanted to put fiberglass cloth. And so this is, you can kind of see that this is what's the last layer. And that was to just finalize the strength of this. This is just added reinforcement, and it of course it ties in to the panel, so that way it's all binded together, the fleece and of course the panel. And of course with all the resin, we got ourselves a really stout panel. Now if you recall, when I made these walls and I hung the fleece to drape over and create that you know, this wall, it hung over on the top and on the bottom. It kind of went this way on the bottom. Well, as you can see, I cut it off just so that I'm left with just the wall. And I'll show you on the other side, I also cut. But just so you can see the fiberglass cloth there. You can kind of see some of the mat. So it came out really, really good. The other side, I put fiberglass cloth over the entire panel and draped the cloth over into the walls to give it that added reinforcement from the outside. Now when I cut this, the excess that was hanging over, well, that made it so that the wall was right up against the panel, and I wanted to tie them together to prevent any problems, and that's why I used the cloth to go over. And and it has 2 layers on here, and you know, I got a couple wrinkles like right here and right here, so I wasn't gonna, you know, try to make this perfect, because this is going to be under, you know, sound deadening material and then of course upholstery. But I did want to make it nice and smooth, because when I place the sound deadening material on top of this, it's going to show every imperfection through the sound deadening material. So I sanded this whole thing down with 80 grit sandpaper. So I wanted to get it smooth but not perfect. So when I run my hands across this, it feels really smooth. I mean, there's slight bumps here and there, but for the most part it is very smooth. I mean, you can see some of the highs and lows. So these are highs, and I try to make it as best as I could. And then I did a little sanding in here just to get rid of all the little bumps and imperfections, so that it's nice and smooth. So when I do the carpeting, it's you know, it's really smooth. So now, how does it fit? Well, let's check it out. So here it is, installed in the car. It's looking really, really good. So the whole plan behind this project was to get this trunk nice and straight. At least this portion here, because obviously I can't do anything about that bump. But for the most part, the trunk floor is going to be straight. And so I got that level, so you can see that's what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted. You can see there. So mission accomplished for the initial part of the plan. And of course, as added bonus, I got a compartment there. So the next thing I need to do is I need to fill this with foam so that I can take up the space between the wall and the outside. I don't want any airspace under this panel. So I want it all filled, and expanding foam is going to do its job and fill up that air gap that's around the whole panel. And then there's some gaps on the bottom here, you can see. Even though this panel is in there and it's not going anywhere, there is, you know, little imperfections here and there. And when I put the foam, expanding foam, it's gonna of course fill up and probably seep out of those areas, therefore filling those areas as well. And then all I gotta do is take a razor blade, cut along there, and get rid of all that foam, and then take some liquid nail and glue it. I mean, it's going to be glued with the foam, but just to close it off and protect the foam, I'm going to glue it all the way around. And I'm going to see if I can use this tool to get me a nice bead all the way around. And this is just a caulking tool, and this is the same tool I used to get this. You see that bead? And that's pretty much what I want. So when I do the carpeting, it'll be nice and smooth, transitioning into from the wall to the floor. So it's going to look pretty sweet. The next part of the project involves figuring out what I'm going to do for a door. Now initially the idea was to use this 1/8 inch press board as a door. But now that I've gotten this far into the project and actually seeing how wide this door actually is, and now, you know, with the fiberglassing and everything, with the whole mindset that this compartment has to support some type of weight, well, I think that an 1/8 inch press board is not a good idea. As you can see, it bows quite easily. So I'm gonna have to think of another way to remedy the situation where the door has to support some type of weight. But this video is long enough, and we're gonna have to see what I do in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed, and as always, thank you very much for watching.